Welcome to
Tamarindo Podcast.
Hosted by me, Brenda Gonzalez, a political nerd and nonprofit capacity builder.
And me, Ana Sheila Victorino, a queer well-being enthusiast and mindset coach. We are a Latinx empowerment podcast discussing politics, culture, and how to keep your calma with well-being practices and self-love.
Our mission is to use laughter and conversation to inform and inspire. For us, self-care and advocacy go hand in hand.
We want you to be your best you, so together we can build more inclusive communities.
Welcome to the show. Woo! Hello, and welcome to Tamarindo. Welcome back, everybody. Ana Sheila, what do we have today?
What's up, y'all? So today our guest is Yesika Salgado. She's a Los Angeles-based Salvadorian poet who writes about her family, culture, city, and fat body. She's an important community voice here in LA, and we are happy to finally have her on the podcast. We don't want to delay that too long, but Brenda, I wanted to catch up a little bit with you and also shake it up by sharing our matracas, basuras, and calmas to open up the episode today. But first, before we get into our fun questions, Yesika is LA born and raised, and she rides so hard for her city. That's something we talk about on the episode. And I think that goes for both of us too, Brenda. Like, I actually moved back to LA because I felt called back to be in this community, to serve this community. So I want to ask you, Brenda, what is your favorite spot in LA?
Right now, my favorite spot in LA is the State Historic Park. It is a beautiful, gorgeous park. And I love it so much because, one, I could walk to it. My dog is absolutely obsessed with it. She knows it's one metro stop away from our house. So she will literally force us to go to the metro because she knows that means I get to go to the State Historic Park. So it's her happiest place on earth. But also, if you walk around that park, you get to know a little bit of the history of what helped make that park possible. It was green space protected by community organizers, community leaders. There's still opportunity to protect that space because there's desires to put a gondola over it, casting a shadow over it. There are some really some projects that have been part of, like affordable housing projects that have been in LA for many, many years. And for many folks, that's access to green space. So it symbolizes what is possible when community comes together. But in addition to that, because I know you prompted these questions for me in advance, so I need to think a little bit about my favorite spots in LA. I have a soft spot for Park La Brea, the Farmers Market, which is right there, Pan Pacific Park, Hancock Park Elementary. These are all spaces that mean a lot to me. When my family and I came to the U.S., we first moved to Koreatown, but soon after we went to live in Park La Brea. My mom always refers to this time as like when we were rich because it's such a nice area. And of course, we could only afford it because our whole family was in one room of a 2-bedroom apartment. And my uncle was in the other room. So that's why we could afford to be rich, as my mom jokes around. But this space is very beautiful to me because I have a lot of fond memories of being there with my brother. For folks that might not be familiar, but I lost my brother when I was 11, and I'm super grateful for the fact that when you're little, at that point at 11 when I lost my brother, he had been part of my life 100% of my life. Time moves so much slower when you're a kid. So even though looking back, my time in Park La Brea, near that, maybe the time is not long, it felt very lengthy and it felt very special being there with my brother. So we had our birthdays. Our birthdays are July 14th and 15th. So we had our birthday party at Pan Pacific Park. I used to ride in the back of his wheelchair and zoom to Blockbuster to get a movie. I went to Hancock Park Elementary, where at the time, I'd love to see the data, but at least at the time I felt like I was the only Mexican kid. And it's probably true. I probably was the only Mexican kid at Hancock Park Elementary. So these are spaces that mean a lot to me. Anytime I get to be in that area of LA, it brings back such fond memories. What are your favorite places, Ana Sheila?
Well, I just want to say that was a really beautiful share, and I appreciate you sharing that and opening up about that. So for me, I think what's standing out right now as I come back is my neighborhood, Boyle Heights, especially moving back from Mexico. It's been such a nice transition place because I get to speak Spanish all the time because it's so family oriented. It feels really safe and just like so community oriented. Like it's just so many things that just resonate with me so deeply. And we actually talk about this during the interview, so I won't go into it too much, but it's a special place. I feel very protective of it. I feel honored and privileged to get to live here and be thoughtful about how I take up space in Boa Heights, a traditionally Mexican and Latine neighborhood in the east side of LA. Yeah.
Lovely, lovely. And I'm so glad that you're so much closer to me now.
I know, it's so easy to get over to each other.
Yes, and I think I saw you more when you lived in Mexico than when you live in the west side of LA. So.
It's true, y'all. If y'all are not from LA, like living on the other side of the city is like living in another country, basically.
Yes. All right, so ready for our rapid fire questions?
Yes, so let's get started out. What do you want to give a matraca to this week?
Well, I'll start with a light one because it's going to get heavy in a minute. But my celebration is that Indian Matchmaker is back. It's one of my favorite shows to watch on Netflix. I love this show. If you're not familiar with it, the name kind of explains what it is, but it's this woman that is world renowned for finding a match for folks that want to find their partner. Indian folks that want to find their partner. And it's so hilarious because she will ask all of them, okay, what are you looking for? And everybody will say, fit, kind, educated, like this big list about 7 things. And she's like, that's too much. You can only get 50%. Only 50%. That's too much. And I like how she keeps it real. Y'all have long lists that are just a little too unattainable. I love Indian Matchmaker. It's such joy. So what is your matraca?
Okay. So put that on my list of shows my long list of shows that I need to watch, that I get to watch. Thank you for that recommendation. My matraca actually goes to J-Lo. So I got to see her, the premiere of her recent Netflix movie called The Mother. Shout out to Con Todo Netflix for the invitation for that. And it was really cool because in the movie, she plays this woman who has to go rescue her long lost daughter. And she's a killer. So in order to get her back, she has to do all these stunts. And like, it was just really inspiring and empowering to see her play this role, like a badass kicking ass at her, in her 50s. I loved it. She did amazing stunts. And, I generally have low expectations for her acting, if I'm being real. And I thought she did a great job. I thought the movie overall was good. With these kind of suspense, like action movies, I also normally have low expectations, but I thought the movie was enjoyable. And yeah, it was just inspiring to see her do her thing like that. And ¿y qué más?
Perfect for Mother's Day.
Yeah, so shout out to J-Lo doing her thing, showing us. And also, of course, the director is a woman, right? Of course, that's who you see that puts a woman in her 50s be a fucking badass. And that's why we need more women behind the screens.
Sign me up. Anytime there's a woman involved, sign me up. Women directors for the win, always.
For sure. So J-Lo looking sexy, badass, all the things inspiring to me, for sure. So
speaking of J-Lo, there's been a lot of farandula, right? They get these videos of Ben Affleck looking a little annoyed and pissed off. But I just took a deep dive and like all of these videos are out of context. They are doing fine, y'all. They're doing just fine. And I love Ben Affleck. I love his Espanol. And you know what? He's allowed to get angry at the paparazzis. I would be pissed if the cameras were in my face 24/7. So just a little love for some Benifer.
Yeah. And actually, I did want to speak on that because I saw them. I saw them at this.
They looked good, right? They were fine.
They looked good. He looked good. He was in good spirits. I saw him in the movie theater and he was in good spirits. And I think that whatever they've been throwing at Ben at Ben and J-Lo and saying that J-Lo's making him miserable, like to me, me huele misogynism and like folks just taking
racism,
issue,
let's be honest.
And racism and people taking issue with powerful, successful, aging women. Like we just like that's what it comes down to. So like fuck that.
Powerful, successful, aging Latinas specifically.
Yeah,
yep.
So
anyway,
y'all,
nothing but love for them.
So let's pay attention to how we are complicit in this because we don't even notice sometimes when we're feeding the narrative too and where that comes from. So an opportunity for us to be mindful también. Anyway, all right, Brenda. So what are you putting in la basura?
This is a long one, so buckle up.
All right.
There's a lot of hateful rhetoric about immigrants, but just it hasn't gone away. It never will go away. These anti-immigrant rhetoric, this racism, and it's really flaring up right now because there's an election around the corner. And I know that part of the anxiety that folks have about immigrants is like, they're taking our jobs. And you know what? Maybe they have a point. Maybe we've gone a little too far with taking some jobs. Let me give you an example. I think we've gone a little too far by taking white supremacist jobs. So let me tell you some Latinos that are pissing me off right now. There's Nick Fuentes of Mexican ancestry, who's a white supremacist and part of January 6th leader. There's Enrique Tarrio, Afro-Cuban background. Doesn't look white at all, who's a Proud Boy national chairman. And he was recently convicted of seditious conspiracy for helping to plot the January 6th violence. He wasn't even there. He plotted from behind the scenes and he was convicted. Then we have George Alvarez, the man who ran his car into migrants in Brownsville, Texas, reportedly yelling anti-immigrant remarks. And then we have Mauricio Garcia, a neo-Nazi sympathizer who gunned down 8 people, including children, injured 6 more. And this was on near Dallas. He had a patch that said RWDS, which stands for Right Wing Death Squad. So these Latinos are taking your job. They're taking your white supremacist job. And I'm pissed. I'm absolutely pissed. So all of that shit goes in la basura.
There is a special place in la basura for men like that. 100%.
The nastiest, cruddy part of the basura, like down at the bottom.
At the bottom, donde huele feo, donde
huele feo, donde hay pescado del otro día. That is where these Latino white supremacists belong.
Y que se queden ahí. Ugh. All right. Well, I guess I'll share my basura and then we'll go into calma so we can add some balance, y'all. So what's going in la basura for me is just the attack on Black and brown community spaces here in LA. I've obviously been plugging in a lot more since I've been back. And so I just want to give a shout out to a few that I have frequented and really enjoy. And so there's the Compton Community Garden. If y'all can donate money to them, they're trying to secure their space. And then there's also Plant Chica, which is a plant shop that also hosts some really beautiful events, including events by Cuties LA, which is a Black and brown queer platform and space. And so y'all, they need our help. So we'll include the links so y'all can donate and they can continue to have these spaces because they're so important. They provide us with greenery, they provide us with organic food, all the things. And so I just want to see these places survive because they're in a really vulnerable place right now.
Thank you. Those sound like beautiful places, beautiful names too. I love that. I love all those names. And thank you for telling us about them. And thank you for providing those links so that we could support and learn a little bit more. All right. So what gives me calma when I think about these pieces of crap, Latino white supremacists, I think of like, what's the counter opposite? What these guys have is they have toxic masculinity. But have we ever asked what is not toxic masculinity? And I think that's Pedro Pascal, and that's why we are freaking obsessed with him. So let me play what I found to be words of affirmation. You all remember MTV when we were kids. They used to play music videos. Now they don't, but they do continue to give awards. So MTV just recently gave Pedro Pascal an award for being, the best hero. And this is what he said as his acceptance speech, which I find just such a beautiful message. So we're going to try to play it for y'all right here.
And just makes it such an honor. I wish we could all be together so that I could look into your eyes and tell you that all the young people in the world are my heroes, and I wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. I want to say that you deserve a world that serves your interests. You deserve to be healthy. You deserve to be safe. You deserve for your individual rights to be fought for and protected. You deserve real heroes in this world because you are real heroes to me, and I love you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so that was Pedro Pascal. So just, what I find, everything that he does to me is a perfect example of what is the opposite of toxic masculinity. It's Pedro Pascal.
My calma is mixing up my daily routine. So normally I get to the gym in the morning. It's the first thing I do. However, what I've realized is that if I don't get to the gym early enough, if I'm starting my quote unquote work day, because I work for myself, by closer to 10 or after 10, then I feel like I'm kind of behind. And that's partially in my head, but the reality is that my nervous system feels like that, and it kind of throws off the rest of my day. So what I've been doing, and I had been noticing that, like, oh, I'm kind of feeling behind, and then it kind of affects the rest of my day. So what I've done is I've now realized, like, okay, well, if that's how I'm feeling, then let's switch it up. So what I've started doing now is I'll still get a little bit of movement in the morning. So I'll do a little walk with my cafecito and my little traveler mug. So I do a little walk around my neighborhood, and I love my neighborhood. Just so family oriented, lots of hills I can look at. And then I go to the gym in the middle of the day. So like once I've accomplished, I feel like I've done a few things with my morning, with my work, then I do that. And then it feels more like a break as opposed to, and I don't feel like I'm behind or anything like that. So I really I made that tweak, and I've noticed that my nervous system feels better. So just like a recommendation for y'all, if you're feeling like your nervous system is out of whack, if your day's been feeling kind of sluggish, it could be a time for y'all to check in with your routine and see if a different routine might support your nervous system, your calma, a little bit better. So that's my calma. And then speaking of reflecting and adapting, one of the many things we talked about in this interview was how Yesika went through a creative block after writing 3 books in 2 years. And she talks about what actually eventually brought her back to the joy of writing. And obviously, we're so happy she did. And you'll hear about this and so much more in the interview. So let's get to it. We're so happy to have you, Yesika Salgado, on Tamarindo. Finally, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Of course, I'm so happy to be here. I was just like, when? When I saw you at Espacio, I kind of invited myself on the podcast. So I'm glad that you said yes.
Girl, obviously, to me, I was like, duh, ¿por qué no? And I want to say it really is. And we took a minute to have you, but I think it's so special because I feel like you really are a really important part of the fabric of Los Angeles and, a Salvadorian voice, a Latine voice here in Los Angeles. So it feels really special to have you, and it feels special to get to continue to uplift and amplify your voice and your work with the platform that we have. You know what I mean?
Of course.
So thank you.
Yeah. And I also I genuinely don't ask to or say yes to things that I don't want to also lend my platform to, So I love that we could bring both of our little corners of people that listen or engage with us to connect with each other. And I've been watching y'all from afar and listening and enjoyed the podcast for a minute. So I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you. And it was special to get to connect with you at Espacio 1839. Lo dije bien, ¿verdad?
Sí.
1839, which is a special place because it's a community space in Boyle Heights, and for y'all that are not in LA, Boyle Heights is in East LA neighborhood that it has a really strong community presence and that has pushed back against the gentrification that has happened in a lot of the East LA neighborhoods. So it's a very special space, and it was beautiful to get to see you read your work and put together a really beautiful night of storytelling and poetry from other community speakers and poets and storytellers in LA.
Yeah, no, and it's really it feels like a family affair whenever anything happens at Espacio. Nico and Mara are great friends of mine, and they contribute so much to LA as a whole. They never charge anyone to have anything in their space, and that's rare in LA, right? And so whenever I'm there, I know that it's just going to be a love fest, and if folks, it's my favorite place to perform in LA outside of the Poetry Lounge, which is where my beginning stomping ground. So it's my second home on the East Side.
I love that. Oye, guess what? So I was at an event these last few days, and it's funny because on my feed came up, on my Instagram feed came up the Poetry Lounge. I saw that you, I think, were performing, and then I also saw that Bay Davis was going to perform, and I was not going to be there for either of them, but to get to see, just to see the Poetry Lounge just continuing to do that work is awesome. I've never seen Bay Davis. I'm kind of in person, so I was bummed that I missed that. But I was at this event, and I met Shihan, who I guess is the creator of the Poetry Lounge. Perdón?
Yeah, that's my mentor. He's the man that's taught me so much of what I am as an artist.
Yeah, and it's crazy how these little como conexiones happen, right? Because I literally had the poetry lunch come up on my feed. I was like, oh, I'm bummed I can't go see you and I can't go see Bay Davis. And then I'm like, oh my God, I just met Shihan and I didn't even put it together. And I got to see him perform and
oh my goodness.
and share a piece about his grandmother. Girl, me tenía en
the piece like, about her memory. The piece about her memory, like
yes.
I'm so sorry. That's so funny. I'm silencing my phone, but he just texted me.
No, he didn't.
He just texted me right now.
Oh, girl, like algo when things like this happen, I'm like, algo está pasando. Like, let me listen to this energy because hay algo. I don't know what it is.
That means you need to come to the Poetry Lounge. But
it really does.
Just for our listeners, Shihan Van Cleef is someone y'all should look out. He's a legend in spoken word. And he has been my coach since I started performing like in 2008-9, and a lot of the craft that I've learned has just been from sitting next to him at poetry events and listening to his opinion about everything. And he's just magic, and he's a really dope person and really funny too. And
it's really beautiful how it seems like y'all really sort of keep mentoring each other and creating space and community for each other. What does it feel like? How do y'all, because I feel like, several decades ago or whatever, like we didn't have this many Latine writers with a platform so for y'all now to have this and also to have each other. Tell me a little bit about how that's changed from, because I know that you've been writing your whole life, right? What has it felt like? Have you notice the difference in your well-being or also just like in the community having more folks kind of come up, or what has that shift been like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. When I started out in spoken word, like it's the written page, the written work is different than the performance world, right? And so in the written page, you can kind of find someone if you set off to look for them in bookstores, libraries, or whatever, right? But all I had was these older writers that I've never met that are like almost like fictional creatures to me. Like Sandra Cisneros is this entity that exists somewhere out in the world, right? And then at the Poetry Lounge, which is a predominantly Black community that's really, really beautiful, there wasn't a lot of a strong presence of Latina poets, although Shihan himself is Puerto Rican, but there wasn't like many more Latinas, like women, and that were sharing their work. And so I partnered with Angela Aguirre, and we had started Chingona Fire, and we would create poetry open mics here in LA. And so we became together like this entry point to a lot of poets, right? And in the middle of all of that, Angeli was in New York doing her thing. I remember a friend of mine was hanging out with her and called me and was like, I have one of your mangoes here, and like put her on the phone, and that's how we met each other. And she's like, I love you. And she's just so easy to love too. And as I got to know her work and I got to know her, I just have made myself available to her and supported her in whatever way that I can. And she's reciprocated that with a beautiful friendship and saying yes to any invitation I've given her. And so I always get excited to have the privilege to be able to book my friends for things or people that I really believe in that need a little money in their pocket and a little bit of a platform, right? And so Angeli has been that person, and to see her also do her own thing with her craft. Now she's writing and directing, and that's so amazing. And she's just such a beautiful person on the inside that, like, she's fine on the outside, but such a beautiful person on the inside that, like, I really, really, really love that I have amazing peers that are like killing the game too. And we're all like focused on elevating each other and like growing. And that doesn't happen all the time, so
You know what I imagine? It's gonna sound cheesy, but I imagine just all, whatever field you're in, but right now, because I'm talking to you and we're talking about poetry and writing, I'm imagining like all the Latine poets and writers como que agarrándose la mano en un circulito, you feel me? And then like you're holding hands the whole time. So if anybody kind of like starts to fall, like they have like all these people that are like championing them and like, no, we got you. Like, okay,
yeah.
you might, a lo mejor te caíste poquito, pero no te vamos a dejar ir. Like, we're in this together because it's hard, right?
It's exactly like Elizabeth Acevedo is a good friend of mine. And in 2014, when I was trying to figure, like, barely starting to feel confident enough to like pursue something, she was just like, you should do this, you should do that, whatever. And then as my career grew, we had lunch together one day and she was like, this is what you need to do with your bank accounts and your account, you know, like, so conversations like that are important. Like Elizabeth Velasquez is another, like, she and I have exchanged like resources or like just cheered each other on. And so many of us that are out here, Melania, like,
yeah,
we've argued with entire platforms for each other to advocate for the other person to get more money. So it's like we're all like, so I love that we're all so down for each other. Or when we see one of us doing something really dope or killing the game, like Jose Olivares has a book out and I've been like telling everybody to go buy it, and he's done the same when Hermosa came out. And it's just really dope that so many of us Latina poets that are like have a lot of visibility are still so down to support each other, and those of us that don't have the visibility. So we're in a really, 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 really dope era right now. And I know that in the future when folks continue studying our work, they're going to be like, how we get excited that we knew, like, certain people knew each other. You know, like when you study the Harlem Renaissance and you're like, oh, these fools were all like kicking it together. That's so dope. That's kind of what it is now. And I think that's so cool.
Yeah, this energy makes like my little girl self like happy, you know, the little girl self that was looking for more of this. So I'm happy that if not for me, I mean, it's still for me, right? It's still for me, a lover of the word, but it's for our little girls and boys, niños, niñas, for all of them también, right?
There's so much diversity now. Like, you don't have to see yourself in Gabriel Garcia Marquez, you know? Like,
right.
There's so many other things where you could, like, so many other stories. Like, you know, you could have Yosima Reyes, or you can have Yesika Salgado, or you can have Denise Froman, right? Like, you could, whoever it is that you connect with, whatever your identity is, whatever your gender is, whatever your sexuality is, there's someone out there writing a story that you're going to see yourself in. And that's so dope, because as kids, we were like, all right, Judy Blume, what are you going to tell me, right?
For real. Okay, so I'm going to ask you a poetic question in the sense that I want to know, what is poetry and writing for you?
For me, poetry is, at its core, poetry is a question, does anybody else feel like I do? Does anybody, like, is anybody else experiencing this? You know, like, we all come to poetry looking for ourselves, looking for our own reflection, and it's the writer's job to provide that mirror for people. Like, I tell folks that, like, I write for myself before I write for anybody else, because that is what keeps me the most honest and the most genuine, like the most authentic, right? Because if I'm writing for the girl that I was when I was searching for myself in all these books, that means that there's another girl out there, another person out there that feels like I did, and they'll be able to see themselves in that. If I start worrying about, like, the critics or, like, the accolades or whatever, like, that's when I could tell my work suffers. Porque, like, I'm not writing from that real... all of my poems start with a feeling. Like, when a feeling doesn't fit inside of me, I'm like, oh, I need to write this down. And whenever I try to write and it doesn't start from a feeling, you can tell. You can tell I did it, because it doesn't have that, like, yesy, like, spice to it, you know, or the sweetness that I give to the things that I write. Yeah,
that feels like, I mean, to me, that's like when that feeling is como your divine expression.
Yeah. It's like, I tell people that sometimes it feels like this doesn't come from me, that it comes from like somewhere else, and I'm just a vessel. And I know that so many of us say that, but it does feel like that, because there's times that I go back to some of my work and I was just like, this came out of my head. And it's not on some, like, I'm a genius, right? It's more of a, like, how can I access that again? Where did it come from? I don't even understand. Something aligned, and this laser beam just fell into my head. Like, I'll go back and read Corazón, as a whole, and I'd be like, I didn't even realize that this is what I was building. Something was guiding me as I was putting this together with all of my books. And so what I've learned is just to surrender and get out of my own way, so that I saw a TED Talk somewhere that it said, like, genius originally meant like these other like gods or spirits that would speak to us. And somehow, as we became individualistic people, we interpreted the genius to be from us, right? And so that's what I just think of it. I'm like, all of this is coming from somewhere else, girl. And there's an abundance of it. It's never going to run out. You just got to teach yourself to be like down and listen to this stuff and do the work. Because sometimes that work is scary.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's spiritual. It's like staying connected to that deeper part of you, ¿verdad?
Yeah.
Not like the part that's like cares about all the external stuff. Es como que de aquí adentro.
Like the universe is like, I sound such like a hippie when I say this, but I mean it. The universe is in constant communication with us. Like the world is speaking to us. We're not isolated. We're not living isolated experiences. So I'm always looking at everything. I'm like, how is this going to feed my work? Right? Yeah. I watch a movie, I experience something, I have a conversation, you know, and then I'm like, okay, this is a poem or this is a story. There's something in here worth examining. And I make my little notes. Sometimes I go back to the thing or sometimes I don't, but I make my little notes and everything. There's like a little camera in a writer's head and we're recording everything because we're going to play it back later. We're like, this is like, we're taking inventory of everything. And it's exciting when that creativity kicks in. I went through a block, like 2 years where I couldn't write, and I'm coming out of it. So right now I'm like, oh, everything's a poem. Like, I want to write. Like, everything's getting in my way of writing. So it's exciting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So tell me, so you went through this block. What? Because I think this could be helpful for anyone, regardless of, you know, if you're a professional writer or like if you just write for yourself or really anything, right? What helped you, any creative expression, pero what do you feel like got you out of that block? Like what's different now that wasn't true kind of recently?
It's multiple things. One was I was exhausted. I wrote 3 books in 2 years, you know, and I kept thinking that machine had to keep going and it couldn't. And then I started like beating myself up about it, second guessing my voice, thinking that I had plateaued, thinking that like during the pandemic, I would watch old videos of myself and cry. It sounds so funny now, but I used to be like, I lost that. I don't know what that is anymore. That's not going to happen for me anymore. It was a coincidence. It was a fluke. The imposter syndrome kicks in, right? And so then I had to tell myself like, this is the person I've been my entire life. I've been a writer my whole life. Why won't I be that now? So a friend of mine had told me that in order to write, you got to live, you know? You got to live a little. So I started focusing on living a little, building relationships, having interesting conversations, finding humor in things, like feeding my social media content with other things that are just not poetry, just to interact with folks. And then also taking care of my mental health, like taking care of my physical health. Because a lot of the brain fog was coming from like an undiagnosed illness that I had that I didn't know. And so I was so stressed about what was happening to my body. And now that it is and I'm taking care of it or whatever, I'm like, oh, I feel vibrant in a way that I hadn't in a bit. And so it's just a reminder that talent and skill are things that we work at. And if we work at it, it's evergreen. It's always going to regenerate, but we just got to give it time, you know, like you don't expect someone that just ran a marathon to run another marathon the next day, you know. So I wrote 3 books in 2 years. That's wild. I didn't have anything to say for a while, and that's okay. And that's okay. But you think that if you don't keep feeding your readers, you're gonna lose them, and that's not what happens, you know. Like folks will wait. We're all waiting for Rihanna to give us another album. You know,
it's true. I mean, she has been taking her sweet time, pero like, you know, at this point, I'm like, a ver. But I have question for you, kind of a follow up question on that. Do you think that, it's like, do you think that you started to focus too much on like, I gotta keep producing, sort of like what kind of capitalism does, like constantly having us think about produce. Like, did that sort of come into play también? That took you away from like the joy of the process, tal vez también too?
Absolutely, like the desire to produce, because I got my audience used to me constantly giving them new work, right? And but also what folks don't tell you about success is that it could be its own curse in a way, because you know, I've had a really successful trilogy. So then you're thinking, did I luck out with this? Like, was it timing? Was it this? Was it that? So then you feel the pressure of all of that on what comes next, right? Like, okay, I undertook such a huge project for writing 3 books in 2 years, and promoting them and touring and everything and all that. So now this 4th book has to be the book that pushes me to the next level. It has to be the book that gets me the big advance and I go to the top 5 publishers. This has to be the New York Times bestseller. Like, these are the things you tell yourself, the things that you haven't accomplished yet. So you get so stuck in the, like, I have to create this amazing thing that's going to top what I did before, that it becomes like an overwhelming pressure. And then, like, who's going to write in that? So I just keep telling myself, girl, have fun. Your best work is when you're having fun. When you're like, I mean, having fun, and I write about heartbreak a lot, but you know what I mean? Enjoying the creativity of it. Porque si me pongo, like, if I start thinking, like, is this going to end up XYZ? Is this going to take me to the Today Show or I don't know, whatever? Like, that those are all perks of the craft. I can't sit here and expect those things, because then I'm never going to enjoy the things that do happen, because they're not the things that I decided I wanted to happen, you know. And New York Times bestsellers, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But if I wrote something that I strongly believed in and I strongly loved, whether that comes or not, I'm still going to stand by what I do, you know. And instead of, because I could recreate another version of Corazón and it'll do well, because people love that kind of stuff, but I want to challenge myself and tell a story I haven't told yet, and which is what my current manuscript that I'm working on is called Mentirosa, and we'll see when that finds a home somewhere. And I've told myself I'm not going to stress it. People will get it when they get it, because it's gonna be what my other books were. It's gonna be me, and todavía I'm not ready yet, but when I am, it'll come.
Yeah, thank you for sharing such a powerful and I think really real and raw reflection on the journey of a writer. That was really beautiful. Thank you. You talk a lot about LA and your love for LA. What does LA mean to you, and how does that connection to the city affect how you engage with the community and what you do?
Yeah, well, I mean, LA is home, right? It's where I was raised, where I've lived in the same neighborhood my entire life. Like, literally, like, we only moved like a block from where I lived as a baby. So I know this neighborhood like by heart, but in the same way, it's been so gentrified. I live in Silver Lake in Los Angeles, and if you're not familiar with the area, it's the most gentrified neighborhood in LA, if not the country. At some point, it was the most gentrified neighborhood in the country. I don't know now. But part of why I'm so loud about being from LA and writing about LA, it's because it's drastically changing so much. And a little story was, I was in San Antonio in 2016, and it was my first time that I got flown out of the state to go perform somewhere. And Las Mujeres, shout out to Very That on Instagram, who brought me out. Las Mujeres were like showing me around San Antonio, and we drove by this place called Taco Haven, and they were like, oh, Sandra Cisneros wrote Woman Hollering Creek in there. She would go in there every day, sit at the same table, order her tacos, and work on her book. And I thought that's so dope that in a way that restaurant belongs to her. You know, like, I don't know what happens in there. I don't know if the food is good or not, but I know that Sandra wrote her books there and I want to go. So when I started writing my books, I purposely chose the cafe in my neighborhood to go right in, and was very loud about that, and took my LA Times interview in there, the New Yorker interview in there, like all these things, porque my city is changing so much, and so much of us are being pushed out. But the power of the written word, you know, like, history is what gets written down. So if I write down these stories, my LA will always exist. my LA will always be here, and you can't remove the fact that the black and brown, indigenous, Asian folks, like so many different cultures other than whiteness have made this city what it is. And you can't take that away from us, you know. And so you could put all your mural, because there's a mural across the street from the cafe that's all these white artists. The mural got taken down, so I'm so happy. But it was there for a few years, and it was all these white artists from Silver Lake, and none of them were from Silver Lake. And so I was just like, all right, then I'm not going to have a mural, but I sat across from you and I wrote my books, and I put Cafe Tropical in all of my books so that everybody knew that Yesika wrote her books in this building on the corner of Parkman and Sunset, you know, in Silver Lake. And so that no matter what, wherever I go, I am the Silver Lake poet. And this fat Latina from LA gave herself to the city. And also, I grew up on public transportation, so I had to learn these streets and these corners, and I've stood all over LA waiting for a bus to take me home from somewhere, and did all that. And I just really, really love my city in the same way that I love El Salvador. It's just, I'm a really nostalgic ass bitch. Yeah. and I capture that in my work. And so yeah, and it's a beautiful city. I've seen so many cities in the country, and I'm always just like, oh, we got this in LA.
Yeah.
You know, so why am I going to go somewhere else?
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I love that. So many things you were popping up as you were speaking, but I think you get to be loud because people get to know that you are LA, mm-hmm. right? And especially our community gets to, like, you know, we represent Latino, Latina folk, I think represent close to 50% of the population in Los Angeles, if I'm not mistaken. But yet somehow, you know, a lot of folks, when they, you know, people that are not from here, when they talk about LA or they visit LA, they have this perception of what LA is. Mm-hmm. And I always want to like push that. I'm like, so what is LA to you? Because they have a very narrow perception of LA that leads with white folk in entertainment, right? And like, and all these, what they think LA is. And so I think it's like, no, it's like we are LA, you are LA, like you, this is, yeah, it's, so.
Mm-hmm. I just had an interview with this really huge beauty corporation that owns like multiple makeup brands. And I did something for them internally, but they were like, how would you describe LA style? And I'm like, oh, I know the LA homegirl, like I know the back of my hand. I could spot her anywhere because we shop in the sandy alleys or in the swap meets, but we'll have like a designer purse. You know what I mean? Like for us, it's not like necessarily like brand stuff. It's style. It's streetwear paired with like high glam makeup. You know, it's comfort, but it's also like, we're having conversations with what we're wearing, with what colors we choose, you know, like, a lot of our beauty traditions are handed down from like our older homegirls or our mothers or our tias or our cousins. And it's this conversation we have with each other. And yeah, there's a lot of hype beast and all that. And you see that in LA, but most of those are transplants. If you like, you know, or like we will have somebody wearing Supreme, but they're also wearing like their chanclas with it, you know? And, and I love that we have like, there's this kind of like those people that are from LA, we kind of have this thing where it's just like, yeah, we could spot Hollywood from a mile away, and we're not here for that, you know? Yeah. And 100%. And folks think that I have an ex that he's always telling me, he's like, you're being so Hollywood. This is why we broke up, because you're so Hollywood. I'm like, I'm the last Hollywood bitch you'll ever meet. Because first of all, I don't even like going to Hollywood Boulevard. I don't go to none of those clubs. But also, like, I'm loud and I'm opinionated. And folks in Hollywood don't do that because they don't want to burn bridges. And yeah, but we LA girls, we'll let you know. We'll let you know how it is. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I just moved back to LA I'm from Mexico City originally, and I went back to live there for a few years, and I moved back, and I'm not from LA, but it's the place that I've lived in the longest. I lived 10 years in LA. And it's funny because like I really felt a call to come back to LA. Mira, LA is not perfect, but I think I agree with you. I have so much love for it, and I'm from Mexico, but at this point LA is my home, and I feel like the way that you speak on it, the way that you ride for it, the way that you want to make sure that our voices and our communities continue to be uplifted and have a place, like it resonates a lot with me. And it's interesting for me now, moving back to LA. I'm sorry, perdón. I happened to find a spot to move into Boyle Heights, and that's kind of interesting because you were talking about gentrification.
Yeah.
And as Latinos, Latina folk, like we have the same. Even though I'm Mexican, even though I lived in LA for a long time, I'm still not from Boyle Heights, right? So I'm also conscious of like, how do we, when we move into these spaces, like how do we do it in a thoughtful way so that we're not contributing to the same, some of the same things that we speak out like against white people for, right? Like I can still, how can I do this differently? Not just because I'm brown and I'm Mexican. Do I get a pass for also potentially causing harm, right? So like, how do we get to be thoughtful about how we take up space, right?
I mean, thank you for bringing that up, because I think a lot of us think that we're incapable of gentrifying other neighborhoods because we're XYZ, right? I think that whenever it's at this point, it's inevitable. Sorry, I can never pronounce that word. But it's inevitable that we will not have to that we will be forced to move somewhere else, right? Because a lot of us are getting priced out, pushed out, whatever, right? But I think that when we land somewhere, especially a community like Boyle Heights, like East LA, that's historically Latine, that's historically like folks that haven't gotten the resources that other folks haven't, right? And it's like being aware of the fact that we're coming in with privilege, being aware of the fact that we're guests in these neighborhoods. Because even when I go to Boyle Heights to perform or to do all these things, I consciously try to make the events accessible in pricing or free, because I know that I'm coming in as a guest to a community that I want to service, right? Yep. So I'm not there to extract from them. I'm there to give them a service in a way of gratitude. So I'm a guest in their neighborhood. And so I will make it a point to spend my money with them in like in the locally owned spots, right? If I'm renting somewhere, I'm gonna try to be as ethical with what I'm renting and like, who was there before me? Why did they leave? Right? Like asking questions like that. Like, was it because rent got too high? Maybe that's not gonna be a building that I want to live in if they're like pushing out their tenants, because then I'm telling them that it's okay to do that. And there's so many things like that where it's just like, just check in with ourselves and let's not try to like let's not be shitty people, and listen to the neighborhood, listen to what they ask of you. Some neighborhoods are welcoming new folks because they've had these empty like spaces or whatever, but some neighborhoods don't want us there. So we're there and they don't want us there, then how can we, but we don't have anywhere else to go, then how can we provide, what can we provide to the neighborhood to make it, to support the people that are there? Yes. And also, don't go to a new neighborhood and just because they're louder than you like, don't start calling like the police and stuff. That's the last thing you need to do with your neighbors. Like bringing in
that part,
stuff like that, because I've had friends that are like, I moved into like South Central and everybody here has parties at 11 p.m 12 p.m. I'm like, look, you're gonna go live around people of color, brown, black, whatever, we're lit.
Yes.
You don't want to be here, you don't want to be around us,
girl. Every day I'm hearing, si no es de un lado del otro lado de la música, but then I play my own música too, and we're all cool. I even told the neighbor, I was like, if my music is ever, I literally told the neighbor, I was like, if I ever play my music too loud, let me know. And they were like, they looked at me like, girl, like.
Look, I live in a gentrified neighborhood now. We're the loud family on the block. Okay. We're the loud family because I don't even play music that loud because my sister and my mom don't, whatever. But when my mom yells when she's on the phone, she's out in the yard yelling into the phone. We yell at each other from one room to the other, like everybody can hear us. But when I grew up, and we had our windows open, we could hear somebody playing chente. We could hear somebody playing La Sonora Dinamita. We could hear kids running around. You could hear your neighborhood. And I miss that so much. It's so quiet.
Yeah.
You know what I hear here?
What do you hear?
Bulldozers and cranes and hammers.
Girl.
That's what I hear. And
that's painful to hear, you know?
That it's so infuriating, like, to be woken up. And it's not about the noise or whatever, because it's not the workers' faults, right?
No, of course. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's not about that. It's like what this means about this community, right?
There's a high rise.
And what's happening.
Los Globos is literally up the street from me. Like, I could probably throw a rock at it. And right now, the parking lot next to it is getting turned into a high rise. And so that means a Target was built on the street. And 2 high rises were built around it. I'm like, we don't fit anymore. Go somewhere else.
Yeah,
but we don't. So yeah. So I'm grateful for communities like Boyle Heights and South Central and Inglewood that are like these cultural hubs. They're so culturally rich. People talk about them like the hood, but they're full of so much culture. And I'm so grateful that they allowed me to visit and participate in their culture, because mine was taken from me.
Yeah, no, and thank you for that. And it reminds me, I do feel very honored and privileged, and a sense of responsibility to get to live here right now, and how I get to be in this space. And in the morning, you know what I hear every day next door? I hear somebody say, a las 7 de la mañana, a comer. And you don't know how that feels in my heart. And when it makes me, my mom used to say that, like, you know, they don't come into your room, they're like, a comer. And to hear that every morning, para mí, you know, when I don't live where my family is, it's
so comforting.
It's so comforting. I wanted to write something about that. Y hablando de not calling la policía, I'm actually, you can't see my shirt, but I bought a shirt the day that I met you at Espacio 1839. Y dice más poesía, menos policía. And it just felt so fitting for this talk with you, and you just mentioning police también.
Yeah, shout out to Nico from Espacio. That makes really dope. He makes all the t-shirts and they're so dope. Yeah.
Okay, so I would love to. I feel like our conversations has just been flowing. Pero I would love for you, if you feel comfortable, to share a short piece with the audience.
Yes, absolutely. I will share a piece that I really have been sharing pretty often with folks. Recently, it's in memory. It wasn't written for my friend Tanya Ingram, but she passed away at the beginning of the year, and she was battling lupus, and you know, the battle continues for her, but she's physically no longer with us. But I wrote this poem, and she wrote her version of it, so every time I perform it, I feel like I'm in conversation with her. But it's called At My Funeral. At my funeral, I want you to play Bitty Bitty Boom Boom, followed by Back That Ass Up, followed by Anything by Juan Gabriel. At my funeral, please don't turn down any of my mommy's cooking. She will be grieving and offer you platefuls. Say yes to each one. This will let her feel closer to me. At my funeral, don't read any of my poems. I wrote those to stay alive, let them rest, stretch their legs, find new fingers. At my funeral, thank the women, my mother, my sisters, my homegirls. Kiss their palms because they are holy and what I am the saddest about leaving. At my funeral, round up all of the little girls and let them play with my lipsticks, especially the red ones. I want each mouth to be a rosebud made just for me. At my funeral, let the men make jokes. I have understood that a machismo only allows them to be tender through laughter, and I want them soft and sweet during our final goodbye. At my funeral, do not feel obligated to cry. Dance if that's what your body asked for. Remember, this body of mine felt most alive beneath strobe lights and loud music. At my funeral, I will be dead, of course, but this will be a victory. Praise the sudden illness or accident that claimed me. Praise the doctors, nurses, and prayers that try to keep me. Praise my heart that just couldn't anymore. Praise the years that came, wrapped themselves around my legs and pulled me away. Praise my death because it did not come from my own hands or from a razor blade or from a pill, but instead it came because my body Or my God said, come home, and I collected all that I am, and I walked through that door at my funeral. Please play a song that says, I survived myself. Praise be. Such a sweet, sweet song. Thank you.
Beautiful. I let myself just close my eyes and just soak that in. That is such a beautiful poem. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you so much. And yeah, it was one of those that just came and landed in my lap, and yeah, it's people are like, why are you writing a poem about your funeral? I'm like, it's not about that. It's about survival. It's about the fact that, like, imagine wanting to be alive so much that you could talk about your funeral, because you know that whenever death comes, is going to be because it was your time, not because you wanted it for yourself. And that's a kind of victory that many of us that have dealt with depression hope for. You know, I have bipolar 2 disorder, and sometimes it just feels like I don't know how I'm going to get through something. So, you know, the fact that I'm like, if I ever am not here physically on this world, it's going to be because it was my time, not because I chose that for myself, you know. And not to say that those folks that die because of suicide are not strong people, but every day that we're here, it's a victory.
Yeah. Thank you for that vulnerability and that spiritual expression through that work. It felt spiritual to me.
Thank you.
So thank you.
It is. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So I'd love to ask you now, I like to transition a little bit. We have these fun questions that we like to ask our guests, our matracas, our basuras, and our calma. So I'd love for you to share your matraca for this week, something you're really loving, you want to give a shout out to, person, place, thing, concept, anything.
Yeah, so it's funny. I'm going to just honor it. My matraca for this week is Game of Thrones. I decided to rewatch it from beginning to end. And it's such
my God.
It's such a dark show, but in the same way, like, I'm, like, studying script writing now and those kinds of things. So it's, like, I just like the brilliance of it, you know, like, the fact that this started off as books and now it's this, like, amazing, intricate show, you know, with that shows so many different levels of humanity, even though it's fantasy. It's so dope. And also, like, sometimes I'm like, this just came out of someone's head. They were just sitting around and then they decided to make up all these people with all these languages and all these, like, make-believe, like, things and dragons and, like, queens and all this stuff. So it's, like, really, really cool. And it's always, like, cool to get sucked up in drama that's not real.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay, and what about your basura? What are you putting in the trash?
I am putting in the trash toxic masculinity, like always.
Siempre and forever. Double down on that.
I have a past lover that has kind of been around recently, and he has, long story short, he thinks that if we were to be together forever, I would stop working. And wow. I would not have a career. And we were speaking hypothetically about it because we're not in a relationship. It's not going to happen. But the fact that someone can even fix their mouth and ask me to give this up because they think that that's what I'm willing to do in exchange for their love. And I find that happens a lot with men, that they think that I'm doing this until I find someone to make me a wife. I'm like, have you seen what I've built for myself? Why am I going to walk away from that? So we're throwing that gender roles and toxic masculinity in the trash because
oh my God,
we don't do that here.
I can't believe there's still so many dudes like that. Like, oh my God. Anyway, okay. And what's giving you calma? What is keeping you grounded? What's helping you get through just difficulties y eso right now?
What's keeping me calm? It's been leaning into the relationships and friendships in my life that make me feel safe. And I don't mean physically safe, but have you ever hung out with someone and afterwards you're like, did I share too much? Did I tell them something? Are they going to tell somebody else this? You know, and I've consciously have chosen not to spend as much time with people that leave me feeling like that, you know? So I like the fact that now anyone I spend time with is someone that I could be as vulnerable with. And so if I do put my foot in my mouth, I just have to apologize and we move on, you know, and like mean the apology, not doing it again, instead of it turning into like them talking about me with other people or me not knowing their intentions and things like that. So I've just tried to have people around me that love me, will hold me accountable, but also let me be human.
Mm-hmm. That grace and compassion, because it's grounded in real care and love for you as a human.
Absolutely. And then that I could reciprocate it to them too, you know, like it's always so fulfilling to know that you could be generous in relationships because it's returned. And so I've just been nurturing a lot of that. And also I've been like kind of entering the dating pool again. So that's interesting. Like flirting and stuff is fun. You know, I have no intentions of following through with anybody, but I'm like flirting with everybody right now. So I feel like a light switch turned on that I hadn't felt since 2020. So I'm excited to just like have a flirty summer and see what adventures are out there.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, before we close out, I just want to give you an opportunity. If there's anything that you didn't get to share that you want to share, or it could just be where folks, what you have coming up, how folks can follow you, and anything you want to leave our listeners with.
Absolutely. May 9th, the tickets are going to go up for sale. So if this releases after May 9th, you can go to the Ford Theater website, and in September, I will be performing at the Ford alongside Colibri Mariachi and Sancha. And so that is on the horizon, and I'm really excited. It's a theater and outside in the stars. And if y'all are not familiar with Sancha, she's a phenomenal musician. And last year we had a series of shows together, and so I'm excited to work with her again. She's my muse. But other than that, you could just follow me anywhere on social media. And, you know, you can find my books anywhere books are sold. I prefer that you go to an independent bookstore and get my books through them so we could support independent bookstores anywhere in whatever city you're in. And, and just be good to yourselves.
Beautiful. I just want to, I'm giving my matraca and my calma to you and to this conversation because I feel both inspired and grounded in the work that folks like you are doing for us and for la comunidad. So I want to thank you for making the time to be on the show because you were amazing and we appreciate you so much.
I'm so grateful to be here too, and you're amazing too, and I'm glad that we're getting to know each other too, because we've been in each other's orbits, but now we're here.
I'm so grateful for this conversation. Thank you so much, Yesika.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tamarindo Podcast is Brenda Gonzalez and Ana Sheila Victorino, with production support from Josie Melendez and Augusto Martinez Delgado of Sonoro Media. Our theme song is by Jeff Ricards. If you like our show, please rate and review Tamarindo Podcast or share an episode with a friend.